Hello, I'm Jackie Whall and I'm live here at the SAA, and today I am going to be painting a portrait in oils using a limited palette. So that's enough introduction for me. I'll introduce you to my colours. I have here burnt umber, cadmium red, cadmium yellow, ultramarine blue and white, and those are the colours I'm going to be using to paint my portrait. So we'll get mixing straight away. I'm going to take some of my burnt umber and my cadmium red, and this is sort of going to be like a base colour that I'm going to mix a lot of the other colours from. It looks quite dark and quite frightening at the minute for portraits, but taking bits of it off, I'm going to add some white, and gradually we're going to be getting various skin tones. This takes a little while, but it's worth mixing up a few skin tones in advance. It's also good to see how you can get some quite subtle colours from very vivid coloured paints. There we go. I could have used an alizarin crimson instead of the cadmium red, but at the minute I've been practising with cadmium red, so that's what I'm using today. Going to make a slightly orangier version. That is probably a bit too orangey, so I'm going to add some of that. I'm mixing these a bit quickly. If I could potentially spend a little bit of time making sure the mixes are a bit more mixed in, but you don't want to spend 45 minutes watching me stir paint around. I'm going to mix a little bit of blue in as well for some of the shadows. Oops, not that much because that's going to be quite dark. Oh, didn't mean to do that. There we go. I'm going to need some more white. I'm going to mix up a green because I think she's got green eyes, my reference photo, and I like painting green eyes anyway, but green makes a good colour for the shadows. On my reference photo there's quite a few areas where you can pick out some greens, and you can make quite an interesting green with the blue and the yellow, this particular blue and yellow. I think I might want a bit more yellow with that. Ooh. Right, I think that's enough time spent mixing colours. That hasn't been enough to go on with anyway. So I'm going to get some paint on my paper. I am using SAA practice canvas sheets. I find them quite good to use in classes and things, because when you're starting out, particularly if you've got something which isn't too expensive, you're not too fussed about making a mess, and you can be a bit freer, and you're not, if you spent an absolute fortune on a canvas, then you're a bit more precious about what you're doing, and you're more anxious, and so you hold back. Whereas if you've got canvas sheets and you think, well, if it goes wrong, what's the worst that can happen? You've just wasted a piece of canvas sheet. So that's what I'm using today. It's a piece of practice canvas sheet, and I have a light outline of my portrait on the sheet, and I'm just going to start initially laying down colour. It's just basically getting the colour on the paper, and then I'll start blending afterwards. So it's going to look a bit of a mess at first, but bear with me. I'm using liquid as a means to help the flow of the paint. I'm just using enough that it doesn't drag on the canvas. It will help with the drying as well, so anything that you're wanting to, say, be painting on the next day, most of the colours will be touch dry by the next day. I think white is one of the pigments which stays stays moist for longest, so they may be a bit tacky, but generally it helps with the drying. So I'm just going to use a tiny bit of that to help my colours flow, and I'm going to go right in with a really dark colour initially. So it's going to look a bit, ooh, oh yes, and that is a bit, but I'm just getting it all on at the minute. I'm just trying to try covering the canvas. I'm following the lines that I've drawn roughly, but I'm not getting too fussed about detail at this stage.
You've got a bit quiet, Jackie.
Yes, I have. I apologise for that. I'm sorry. I've lost myself in my painting. I do apologise. What I'm going to be doing now, I've added some quite dark, frightening colours here, but I'm going to go for my mid-tones now, and I'm going to work on those, and then I'll gradually get lighter and lighter, and then once I've done all this, I'm going to start blending in, and that's where the fun really begins. I think I have a mix of that colour, those two colours, because I think I'm not quite wanting something as pinky as that, but I'm not wanting it as orangey as that, so I'm just going to mix what I've got on my palette. That looks okay. So here we go. It's nice just getting the colour on, and it's nice not having to worry about being too precise with it either. You can be, this is one of the things I really love about oil paints, is the fact that when the paint's on the paper or the canvas or whatever, you can then have fun moving it around. It's so easy and lovely to move around. It stays pliable or malleable or whatever the phrase is, certainly for the length of time that I'm going to be here. This is mixing already a little bit with what I got there, but it's not too far, I'm not too worried. Oh no, I will stick. It's easy to get tempted and start wanting to colour in all sorts of things, but I'm just going to keep with this mid colour at the minute. And I must remember to do the neck and the arms, because I do have a habit of concentrating on the face and forgetting the other bits. I do that with ears. When I've got ears to paint, I often forget to paint the ears. And then I've used all my colours up, and I have to make fresh just to do the ears. So, yeah, I'm just getting the paint on roughly first. It's nice just to cover the paper with paint. Sometimes I pop a coloured ground on the paper, so you're starting off with a colour, and then if you don't paint every little bit and you have the ground, the base colour showing through, that can be rather nice. It's quite good to start off with a different colour. I'll splash this on as quickly as possible, because the fun bit comes after this. But it's nice just flinging paint on and not having to worry about what you're doing with it. So that's some mid-tones. I'm going to go with the lighter bits. So we've got quite a sort of a beigey colour here for some of the highlights there. It's a bit darker there, but I'll still paint it in that colour because by the time I blended things into it, it'll darken that off a bit. The nose, yeah, I think I'll do that streak there. Right. This is just a matter of it. I'm just looking at my reference, and everywhere I see a light bit, I'm painting light. When I was doing the dark, if I saw something was dark, I'm just painting the dark, and then I will adjust it all at a later stage if I haven't got things quite in the right place. And I can see where I've missed some of the darker bits as well now, but I'll go back to those. Yeah, it is quite fun just flinging paint on. Whoops. Take a bit more white, I think, and add it to this to get some really brighter highlights. There. Oh,
so I'm going to see if I can stop it from
yeah.
going too much.
I could try and hold on to it. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Perhaps am I being too vicious with it?
No.
Stop me being violent. All right. Okay, I've got some nice pinky bits to her cheeks, and so I'm going to use this pinky colour here. That's nice. Pop that there. And I've got some really interesting greens around the side of her nose and round the side of her mouth, so I'm going to paint those here. It looks a bit odd at the minute because it's just green bits blobbed onto her face, but it's quite fun putting, you can see all sorts of colours in flesh sometimes. There's a bit of green up there as well, might have a darker green. Let's put a bit of the darker green over this side too. Where else can I see green? I can see green down here, but I've already put some thick paint on them. Pop that there. Right, what else? Oops. That's a bit of a dirty colour now. Right, okay. I am going to get my clean brush, and I'm going to, it looks a bit of a mess at the minute, doesn't it? But I'm going to get a clean brush, and I am going to start blending. I'll be using a combination of the brush and my fingers. My fingers are probably the best thing for using to blend. I like using my fingers. But the nice thing about oil paints is that if you think it should be a bit lighter over here, you can just take this light and you can push it that direction there. Or if you think it should be a bit darker over this side, you can just push the paint over here. It's really lovely. You can just move the paint around, and you do the really finer bits of painting, or I do anyway, with my finger or with a brush once all the paint's actually on the paper. So you don't have to worry too much about how you pop the paint on, because you can just move it around and you can get really nice, oops, I'm wibbling my hand now, but you can get really nice lines down the sides of things just by moving the paint along. I just love this bit. So I'm going to try not to go quiet, but it's where I lose myself a bit. Moving the paint around. I think I'm going to have to add some lighter bits on this side, but that's okay for the minute. So hopefully she's starting to take a bit of a shape. I think I need a bit more paint over this side, so I'll leave that for the moment. Nudge that up to the lips. Until I paint in the lips and the eyes, particularly the eyes, she's going to look very weird. There's something a bit creepy when you don't paint in the eyes. So you have to bear with me with that. Just concentrating on the shapes. So with this portrait here, this picture, because it's just a basic photo, a reference photo, it's not anybody I know or it's not commissioned or anything, I'm not too fussed about getting an exact likeness. I'm more concentrating on getting my skin tones right and getting the lights and darks right. 'Cause it's a good way of practicing. I have to do the hair at some point as well to make her look, before I start adjusting too much detail, because it's surprising what a difference it makes when you're trying to decide whether something's right or what's gone wrong with something. Quite often, if you haven't painted the hair, if it's still looking a white mob around her head, it could be really hard to work out whether she's looking right. And then you're painting the hair and you suddenly realise that the areas you were fiddling about and worried that it wasn't working actually look so different, and you often don't need to fiddle around so much. Right. I like doing things like shoulders because you can really go to town with rubbing in with your finger. I'll pick these out better later on, but I'm just trying to smooth it all over and get the basic lights and darks right. Right, what's going on around her mouth? Try not to get too bogged down in detail at the minute here, which can be a bit difficult, particularly when you're near the features. Just trying to get colour on everything. Thing about when you're blending in, thing you need to remember is to keep wiping your finger or your brush, whatever it is you're using, because otherwise, because as you're going along blending, your finger or your brush picks up paint. And so if you're not careful, instead of blending, you're actually painting. So you do need to keep cleaning off your brush or your finger to stop yourself from actually picking up paint and then painting with it. But it is one of the things I really love about oil paints, is the fact that you can move them around and play with them once they're on the paper. Right, that's possibly a bit light there, but never mind. I'll sort that out later. Right, I think I'm going to do the features now. I can pick out the detail of the nose. Oh goodness, that's what I mean about making sure your brush is dry and hasn't got paint on it. Didn't see that happening. Right, let's try and take that off. Right, I'm going to pick out a bit of the nostril, I think, at this stage. Just to mark out where it is. There and there. It's sort of visible, but not as visible on this side because it's a 3/4 portrait view. And I'll just blend this down. And I really like the way with oil paints you can have they're very easy to get hard edges and soft edges because of their beautiful blending ability. Sort of painting with the paint that's already on your canvas. Good, I'm going to, I think, do the eyes next, and then I'll pop some hair on, and we'll see how she looks then and what needs to be refined, because there's going to be quite a few bits to get the shading on the face proper. But let's get some bits done around her eyes and colour her eyes in. Right, how shall I start? I'm going to go over the edges with my burnt umber. And I'm going to do her green eyes. I'm not quite sure what colour. I look closely and see. I think they're greeny blue on the reference, but I've got a nice green mix, so I think I'll use the same green that I've been using on her face.
On your shoulder.
Yep, this one.
Yeah, there we go, that's better.
Is that okay? Ooh, I've gone a bit wibbly there, but never mind.
Oh, it's my fault.
No, it's not your fault, it's me. I often go wibbly even when I'm on my own. But it's a nice thing about oil paints. If you go wibbly, you can nudge the paint to where you want it, so it's not a disaster. And anyway, you can paint over as well when it's dry. You can think, oh right, that's not right. You can paint over that. I'm going to leave her eyebrows until much later, towards the end. In fact, I've come to mention it, I think I might just sort of cover them over a bit with a bit of skin tone. Always try and treat them a bit lightly, because you don't want them to look overly painted in. Although I think it's the fashion these days, isn't it, to have painted eyebrows. Right. That'll do for that. I'm going to start adding some colour. I have a bit of a habit of making the eyes quite bright, too bright, but I quite like painting bright eyes. So let's go with this and see how it looks. Oh, that's not too bright, is it? I'll put a bit of light in there. Dark again, because depending where the light's falling, the eyes will be different shades of their colour. So painting the green. I can touch it up and get it a better rounded shape later. But I'm just, at the minute, doing the same as I've done with everything else, which is getting colour on there. And I'm going to mix a black for the pupil, using burnt umber and French ultramarine. I think they're the classic colours, aren't they, for getting a nice black. Make sure I can see one. Should be nice. Right. Yes.
Can't quite see you.
Sorry.
That's
Like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I get a bit too engrossed, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Right. I've noticed the time actually. Is that a good time or not?
We can have a quick break if you're, yeah? If you
Yep, okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let us bring out the artist in you. If you'd like to learn how to paint or improve your painting, the SAA is here to inform, encourage and inspire you every step of the way. When you become an SAA member, you get so many benefits, including the free bi-monthly newsletter Paint, packed with inspiring step-by-step projects, fascinating articles, and detailed information to get your creative juices flowing. Discounts on over 13,000 art products featured on the SAA website and in the Home Shop catalogue, with free order line and free delivery in the UK mainland. A devoted SAA team on hand to answer your questions and give you the confidence and motivation you need to start painting and develop at a pace that suits you. Plus, a free welcome pack filled with gifts and practical help to get you started, as well as the opportunity to make friends with like-minded people.
Best thing about being a member is the inspiration from the magazines, to be able to purchase things at a very reasonable price.
Yeah, you get the reduction on all the materials, the advice you get.
I could shop from home.
It's a community.
It seemed like a very friendly sort of organisation.
If somebody's thinking of joining, don't spend too long thinking. Just join. They'll love it.
And we're back.
Hi, hello again. Whoops. Right, I'm going to finish off the eyes and I'm going to put a bit of colour on the lips and then I'm going to do the hair and then we'll see what time you've got left and what state how everything looks. So let me put some whites in the eyes. Actually, she's got I'm going to put a bluey tinge in there because eyes aren't totally white, are they? And you've got the eyes, well, it's an eyeball, isn't it? And so it's a ball, it's round, and so you have got shading. You can imagine any ball shape. There's lights and darks. So I'm going to put quite a bit of blue on there and I'll pop some white on there later. This one, this eye is more in the dark and I'm going all over the green, but it doesn't matter, it's just blue. Get some white on there. And I am going to pop a little bit of the white of the eye in there just to give you an idea, although I probably will be touching things up with it later, but it does help to make the eye pop and come alive a bit. That pupil isn't totally round yet. I'll sort that out later. I shall push the oil paint around and get that looking good. Let me just do a bit of the detail around the eye. I use this reddy brown colour that I mixed in at the start with the cadmium red and the burnt umber. For some of these areas around the side of the eye for the tear duct. Actually, I can go a bit lighter than that, can't I? Because that is quite a dark colour, that is. But, having said that, I might use that to then push into the tear duct and get that tear duct colour. It's really dark at this corner. I'll paint it in this. But I think I'm going to be darkening that area up. I think I got that line in the wrong place actually for her eyelid. It looks as though it's going off her head, doesn't it? So what I'm going to do is take it off. And pop it in somewhere else and just paint over. For a basic shape. Right, I'm going to come back to those eyes because they're obviously still very just sketchily drawn in, but I'm going to get her lips in and I'm going to do her hair, and then when I come back and have a look at her eyes, I'll be seeing it in the context of everything else. It's really hard to make a judgment about your painting until you've got paint on all the areas of your picture, because it's all one whole thing, and so you can't just look at one thing in its in isolation and wonder whether that's okay. It's in relation to everything else, and so it's good to get paint on everything and then decide which bits you haven't quite got right and which bits you need to adjust. So I'm painting her lips. So I'm just using a slightly redder version of the colours I've got on my palette. I'm going to add some white and get a nice... I'm using the same principle with the lips as I used for the whole face, in that I'm going to, I'm getting the colours in and then I'll blend and sort of move them around afterwards.
Jackie?
Yes.
I have a quick question for you. I might have missed it at the start. What did you use to draw out your initial sketch?
There's also sorts of different ways. Sometimes I'd grid out, sometimes well, this was actually done, I got the image onto a piece of just ordinary cheap paper, you know, like photocopying paper, and on the back I got some cheap oil paints which I scuffed onto the back of my image. And really worked into the paper, so it wasn't wet, it was tacky. And then you place that image onto your canvas and use a pen to draw around, just as though you were using a tracing paper or whatever. And what that means is you've then got an image on your canvas which has been put there by oil paint. So it's basically using the same medium as you're actually going to be painting in, so it just becomes part of the painting. And also it means you can use that image again on a number of different, I could use the same piece of paper to transfer the image onto a number of sheets. So if you wanted to have a go at something and you want to try different things on the same subject, you can just keep going. Or if you make a mess, you can decide, oh right, but I've still got the image I drew out or whatever on this piece of paper, and I can transfer it onto canvas again.
Cool, very clever.
So with the lips, they're often quite indistinct, where particularly the lower lips, where the lip actually finishes, and so you can merge it into the side, unless she was wearing lipstick where it is more obvious. Generally, anybody who's not wearing lipstick, it's a little bit more. I haven't used this colour yet. I think I'm going to use a darker colour around there. Yeah, when it's lips natural colour, they do tend to merge the lower lip colour. It's all about shadows and where the light's falling for things like lips. And I find with drawing lips actually that if you get the centre line right first, everything else follows on from that, because the lips then just come from the opening of the mouth. I've got my brush is dirty now, so I'm going to get a bit of the clean colour and I'm going to pop it on with this. See if that's a bit better. I'll pop some white on as well, some lighter colour. Right, I think I'm starting to make a bit of a mess of these lips, so I'm going to go on and do the hair, and I'll come back to them. She says still fiddling, I can't help it, sorry, I'll go on to the hair. Right, I am going to use some of my burnt umber and I'm going to use some of my yellow. I'll add a little bit of red in there as well, and a touch of white. I'm going to use probably quite a bit of this. I want a bit of red because that's too sort of cold, I think, with that. That's looking nice, I think, a bit more red, maybe. See what colour that looks like when it's actually on the canvas. Add some white to it. Sometimes you can see what a colour is better once you've added white to it. You can see whether you've got you've got it red enough or brown enough or whatever enough when you add white, because it just helps you see the colour more clearly. There's some golden bits, I'll add some yellows and a bit of that red, make an orangey colour. Ooh, that's nice. I like colour mixing. Got a thing about colour. Not sure if it's quite the colour on the picture, but it doesn't matter. If it makes a nice hair colour, I'll be happy. Right. So I need some more liquid. I'm just going to go right on in here with this because I'm just interested in, I'm not fussed about getting a perfect hairdo, I'm just interested in getting paint on the paper. But I am brushing in the direction of her hair because then the brush strokes do quite a bit of the work for you. I'm doing the same principle as I did with the face. Anywhere where there's dark bits, I'm putting dark. I'm then going to look, after doing that, any of the brighter bits, and I'm going to use my brighter colours. So it's all the same principle. I won't be blending in as much with the hair though. I'll be leaving it a little bit more as it's applied. I'll work on this line along her jaw later. Just getting the paint on. It's good to use as big a brush as you can get away with. That's some nice dark areas down here, just under her chin. Right. Good, and it gets a bit darker down here, and there's some tufts down here as well, actually. I'm going to have to mix up more of that brown. The thing about using a limited palette is if you do run out of paint, if you haven't mixed up enough, it is a bit easier. It's still, I mean, still hard to mix exactly the same colour, but it is a bit easier, the fewer colours you've used, to actually get something similar again. That's not as yellow as I thought it was when, maybe it's because my brush is dirty. I think I might add a bit more yellow to that. Make it a bit more, oh yes, that might be better. Let's see what that looks like. That's a bit better, that's what I wanted. Sometimes it looks a bit different when you paint it on, particularly when you're butting up against other colours and you're dragging some of the colour across. That's a bit. And we'll use some of this colour down here. There we go. Get some white into here. It's got some of them. Lighter bits in here. And that needs to come from there, really. So actually, it's amazing the difference just getting hair on. I've still got quite a bit to do with her eyes because they're just they are just blocked in at the moment, and her lips are just blocked in, and I haven't really done much detail to her nose. But getting her hair in just starts to make her look more human. It's amazing the difference. And so it's best not to fiddle with these other features until you've got paint on the whole face, and actually even doing the background can make a difference as well. But I think I will plug on and just do a bit more detail. She hasn't got her eyebrows yet, has she? So I need to do those. And yeah, I'll just play around with the features a little bit more and then see if I have time to put in a bit of a background. Right, so I shall start with her eyes. Oh, I've got everything in here now. So, I'm going to use my black that I made with the burnt umber and the French ultramarine. I'm going to need to know where to put my finger. I'm going to paint a little bit around the eyelids and everything else and get that properly painted in. And then I'm going to do the eyelashes. Things like eyelashes you want to do right at the end, because you don't want to have to paint around them, because that would look strange. Right. Let's get a bit more of that green there. And there's a bit of definition underneath the, on the lower lid. Oh, goodness me. Not that much. What shall I use to get that off? I'll use that one, I think. Or I might just use my fingers. Yeah, that's okay. Spread that around a bit. So, nice thing about oil paints is nothing's a disaster. Well, it's a matter of opinion, but if you make a mistake, you can generally do something about it. You can move it around. It's really nice and dark here, so I'm going to go darker. And it's dark right at the edge as well. Some dark bits just there, that's dark. Some dark green. I'm going to push some of this paint up towards her eye. Because that bit there, I can't quite see what's going on there. It's all too dark. That's dark here. Dark down here. I'm going to put a bit of light just, I've already got it here anyway, but just underneath her eye. A bit of light just underneath her eye here. Just get the eyeball. Come in quite a bit there, just like that. Right, a bit of dark around the other side of this eye here, underneath the hair. From the shadow, there's a bit of a shadow here by the side of the face of this hair. Yep. I'm going to blend some of these bits I've got here now. I've got a clean finger. And it sort of soften the edge of this here. I could spend a bit longer softening the edges here, but I'm running out of time and I'm wanting to get this as finished looking as I can. Put some eyelashes in. Now, I don't need to go over top on eyelashes. I'm just going to put a darker line just on that upper lid there. If you start doing it, can look a little bit strange if you start trying to paint in eyelashes. In fact, on the reference, you can't really see eyelashes specifically, so just doing that dark line in there. And I can see the eyelashes on the other eye a bit better, so I'm going to pop some, and her eye should be darker here anyway. The paint's a bit wet, so it is picking up some of the lighter paint and making it lighter than the black I'm wanting. So this is one of the things which, if I wasn't doing a quick sketch, if this was a painting taking a bit longer, I'd wait till tomorrow and paint those in darker. And I think I've overdone those eyelashes a little bit, but it's not too bad. Oh, and I've been making a nice mess of her nose with my finger whilst I've been doing her eyes, so I'm going to just get that line better. I think I'm going to put a bit of light in that area just underneath her eye there. Go quite light because it's light on top of quite dark wet paint, so actually I might go a bit pinkier light. So it's actually blending with the colours that are underneath. Ooh. That paintbrush is a bit wet, I think, from the solvent I'm using. So I use my finger. Ooh. I'm making a lovely mess now. So I will stop fiddling with this area and I will get on with her mouth, because looking at her mouth, I don't think she looks very happy, so I am going to make her smile a bit more, I think. So, she looks a bit happier, I think. Let me move this more like that. I'm not sure, but anyway. I'm going to get the edge of her face a bit straighter down here, just by running my brush along the outside. She has this highlight which runs down the side of her face anyway, so the fact that I'm taking some of this dark paint off doesn't really matter. I can nudge it back in. I'll use a drier brush and nudge it back towards the edge. That's what's nice about oil paints. You can just nudge the paint along. I think the paint's got a bit too wet here, but yeah, that's better. I think I'm just going to fling in a background, and then I can fiddle with it. I can do more to her nose, I can do more to lots of bits and bobs. But if this is just a portrait sketch, then I think that's, she looks human, so I'm happy. Let me think. I'm going to use a greeny background because I got some of this green and I like it. It's nice to use up some of your paints on your palettes with the background because you might as well use it up if you've squirted it out. And also, if it's colours that you've used in your painting, then, oops, sorry, I'm wobbling this, aren't I? But it's just good to get a bit of colour on the background, I think. Makes it look more like a finished painting, even though I could fiddle with it for quite a bit longer. Yes, if I was making this a more considered painting, a longer painting, things like her hair, after blocking it in and then doing a background, I would, when it was dry, I'd be putting in wisps of hair. In fact, I could do that even now, put in some thick paint, wisps of hair, just to sort of, so it doesn't look as though she's wearing a mop rather than having hair. But she'll probably do for now, won't she? Let me have a look, see if I can get some browns. The thing about doing wisps of hair is you can't go over it, you've just got to go. It's a one-off thing, so it doesn't matter if it doesn't look exactly like the picture. You just can't faff around. You've got to. Oh, she's got wisps of hair over her face as well, so you've just got to go with it and just sort of do. This isn't necessarily the right colour, but I'm just showing you the idea of wisps of hair coming. Yeah, you can't faff around. You've just got to go with it. Doesn't matter if it's not exact. But you've got to have a bit of the hair coming off into the background. Right, I think that's probably as much as needs doing for a quick sketch. Anyway, so that's me with my portrait.